So this is meant to just be a conversation. And so I will maybe get us started. We can do some introductions, and you can introduce yourselves however you would like. But maybe you could share your name, you could share what age you were when you were in camp, you could share where you lived beforehand, where you were incarcerated, any family who was with you, whatever you'd like.
Okay. I'm Mikio Ishimaru. I was one of the first babies born in camp in Poston, Arizona. So when people ask me where I'm from the reservation in Poston. I've lived all over. Started off getting as far away from California as my parents could. So they moved to New York City. I remember camp because although I was young, the heat and the light burned the memory of Poston into my brain. And so I always had questions that I could ask or comments that I could make about my recollections in Poston. After New York, we got moved by urban renewal where they tore down our buildings and we had to move someplace else, and they decided to get out of New York because I was getting a lot of prejudice as being Chinese. People apparently didn't realize China and the United States were on the same side, so I was teased mercilessly for being Chinese. So I moved next to Chicago and spent the rest of my time growing up there. Eventually, lived in the Midwest, Moline, Illinois, and down to Atlanta, Georgia, up to Seattle, Washington, and then finally down to California, where I lived in Sunnyvale, California.
This is Roy Matsuzaki. I'm not prepared for this. Somehow, I don't know why I'm up here, but I grew up in Florence, California, between near Sacramento County. When I first reported to a railroad station, I was kind of happy. This is my first plane ride, first railroad car. But then when I got on the railroad car, these men with bayonets, they came aboard. I said, what the heck's going on? I couldn't believe what the heck was going on until I arrived at Fresno. The Fresno Assembly Center, there was barbed wire fence and search towers and everything. When I heard a bugle call, I was going, what the hell is this, And I went outside and I heard these people coming to check into our room and make sure we stayed in a room at 10 o'clock. Well, after that, they left and made sure we didn't escape from the Assembly Center. Well, at the Assembly Center, I never saw my father. He was always doing something, but I'd go see a baseball game, and there he is, watching baseball. I never thought he'd ever be a baseball fan until I started playing baseball. But then he was going to watch me play baseball at Roar. At Roar, I think I played a little baseball. That's what became my best baseball sport until I came to college. Well, when I first went to college, I played for San Jose City College the first 2 years, and we always won, but somehow in the first game of the tournament we would lose by 1 run. So that kind of ended my education career. I went to work for Hewlett Packard in Palo Alto. From there, I went to cycle the envious playing time, and of course I retired from Hewlett Packard, and here I would never think I'd have come over here. for 80 years, I kept thinking about this place, but somehow I never thought I'd end up in Jerome. And Jerome to me was wasn't a fun center, but somehow they told us to leave that you're leaving Jerome. Well, I couldn't believe it, but we rode the truck from Jerome to Roar. From there, we ended up in Roar. And the only thing I remember was Roar was the cemetery, and across the street there was this grocery store. And somehow he had us come to the grocery store, but he didn't care how we came because we spent money there. And then finally, a couple of months, we were allowed to visit McGee. Well, McGee was sort of wasn't the ideal center because when we took the bus, this lady says, "You people could ride in the front." And I was wondering, what the heck is happening? He says, the blacks have to go to the rear of the bus. And I didn't understand that concept where blacks have to go to the bus. Well, when I came home, it never did change. And somehow, I don't think the racial prejudice has ended. So anyway, that the reason why I'm here is when I was in Roar, somehow I heard from the speaker that Hiroshima and Nagasaki got bombed. Well, from then on, they told us to go home. To go home to where? Well, they give us $20 a piece, and we came home. So here I am, back at Roar, Jerome, but I never been to Little Rock.
My name is Mitsuya Yamamoto. I was in Elk Grove, California in 1942. I was here in 2019 for my first reunion or pilgrimage here. And they greeted us with monsoon weather, and we couldn't even go to the area. And if I knew I had to come up here today, I wouldn't have made my second trip. Well, what I remember, or what I should remember, is December 7th, 1941. I didn't hear about it until I was at nighttime when I turned the radio on and something strange happened and found out that Pearl Harbor was happening. I had to go to school the next day, and we were the last one on the bus. And on the bus, we were the only Japanese, and I was only the Japanese and the last one on the bus. And there was only a few seats left, of course. And everybody stared at me, and I didn't know which seat to take, and it wasn't a very easy way to start a Monday morning going to high school. But everything turned out okay, I guess. Here now, I appreciate all of. I got one thing to say. Today, her. If it wasn't for her, I guess we wouldn't be in this situation right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Like most Sansei, I didn't know crap about camp. Until I was a teenager, my parents never talked about it. When they talked about camp, you know, it was church camp. So I assume most Sansei, my age generation, are in the same boat that I was, not knowing anything about camp. All I remember is seeing a picture of me, my grandfather holding me as a baby in front of this tar paper shack. And I said to myself, gee, they must have been poor sharecroppers. Here I am as a baby with my grandfather in front of this tar paper shack building, thinking, of course, that he was a poor farmer, which he was probably. Anyway, I didn't know about camp until I was in 1961. I would have been 19 years old, and I was active in junior ACL in those days. We're just organizing chapters throughout the Midwest. And for me, it was a chance to meet girls from other cities. So we went to Minneapolis, Minnesota for a EDC, MDC convention. Over 100 kids showed up, a lot of girls. And so we had a great time there, but we were put into a ballroom and Mike Masaoka spoke. And that's the first time I ever heard him speak. And we're all standing there, and he's telling us the whole story about the evacuation, about the 442, and what took place. And that was the first time I realized things that had popped in my brain about my grandfather and the tar paper shack, about my Uncle Chuck, who his back was all scarred up because he hit by a mortar shell in Anzio. About remembering when I was about 6 years old going to a funeral. It turned out as my Uncle John's body being sent back from France to be buried in North Platte, Nebraska. So all these things came together. And in 1961, you know, we were a little radical in those days, and it was just the beginning of the civil rights and marching and everything. I came back to Chicago and I was really pissed off. And I talked to my dad. I said, Dad, why the hell did you do something? Now, why didn't you fight? Why didn't you protest? Why didn't you pick up something and do something? And he looked at me and he said, you know, Ross, you weren't there. And that was the end of the conversation. But throughout that, I decided to learn more about my uncles, 7 uncles who fought in the war, learn about the camp, learn about why in Chicago, when we moved there, we only lived in a certain area. Chicago was very segregated, redlined. We also, because we lived with my mother's family because we evacuated out of Hanford. We were from Berkeley. My dad is from Berkeley. We lived in Berkeley, but since my mother was expecting me, we moved to Hanford so that she had 3 unmarried sisters who could help her take care of me. I must have been a lot of trouble because they needed 3 aunties to take care of me. But as a result of all this, I got curious to learn more about the 442. I got curious to learn more about the camps, and I learned a lot. And in the process, learned more about my family. We have a Harama family reunion every 2 years since 1975. We have our whole family history. On my mother's side, my grandfather wrote a diary, so we have all of his experiences. So I've been very fortunate that since I first learned about the camps, that we've been able to learn more about our family, and we're able to pass down the story to our Yonsei Gosei, my great-granddaughter. We're able to do all this. So I think pilgrimages like this are a reminder, and hopefully we can all go home and talk to our kids and relatives about coming here next year. Thank you.
My name is Rinko Shibasaki Inosaki. I was born in Strathmore, California, which is about 5 miles from Lindsay, and Lindsay is 60 miles from Fresno. I was, since Roosevelt ordered this executive order 9066, we had to go to assembly center, and I went to Fresno, and we got typhoid shots in one arm and smallpox vaccinations in the other arm. And we were given food, and we stuffed straw into ticking for our mattress. And after 4 months in Fresno, we went to Arkansas, and we got on these trains, and they said, whenever you pass a train, pull down your shades so the soldiers would not see you. They would think you were the enemy. And we had excellent food going to Arkansas. My brother and I could not believe we had real pork sausages for breakfast. Just excellent food. We eventually got to Arkansas, and the train stopped, and the first one off the train was Dr. Kikuro Tyra, and we all disembarked, and the people in Arkansas were envious of us. They saw that we were being clothed and fed and housed. Well, if they wanted to eat my squid, that's okay. And we just had good food. And in Arkansas is where I met Mary Kochiyama. She was Mary Nakahara before she married Bill, and she used to always call him my Bill. I've had a real wonderful life, and I met so many good people in Arkansas that I could just say that I've had a wonderful life, and I hope each of you have a wonderful life also.
Dr. Tyra, who she mentioned, delivered me.
Thank you so much, all of you, for those wonderful introductions and many stories that we got to hear. We really appreciate anything that you are willing to share with us, your new potential new friends. And so, yesterday we went to the sites of Jerome and Rower. And so I was wondering if you wanted to share any reflections, any thoughts that came up, any feelings, any memories, what it was like for you to go back to the sites. That's fair. That's fair. All right, maybe jumping in too quickly.
Actually, my wife's mother was in Jerome and Aurora, and it was interesting talking to her as she got older. In the beginning, she didn't like to talk very much about the camps, but when I related my firsthand experiences from Postum, she just would come out with offhand comments like, "Oh, there's snakes all over," or "Boy, it was hot and humid. I felt I was going to sweat out every day that I was there." And other comments that were negative. But the thing that she did say that was nice was that she had a lot of free time when she wasn't working. After she got out of the camps, I gather she had to work something like 2 jobs just to make ends meet. And, you know, her husband was, my father-in-law, was working long hours. And I guess the first jobs they first both had when they first got to camp was working as, actually, I'm not sure the term, house and girl and boy houseboys, sort of, where they took care of the homes of rich people like the Spiegel catalog people. And so they would have either indoor duty or outdoor duty, almost like slaves on the southern plantations, where some of the people worked in cleaning up the house. And in my father-in-law's case, he would drive and be ready, available as a chauffeur. But in the meantime, he would do gardening and things around the house while he finished off his education as a draftsman.
Well, you know, only thing I can remember about leaving Fresno Assembly Center to Jerome. Well, on the way, so we stopped at New Mexico, and everybody would ask us, "What tribe are you from?" I guess they thought we were Indian being moved across the country.
You know, this is my personal opinion, not for anybody else. This was a horrible thing that happened to us, but I think with my folks working on the farm from sunup to daylight, sunup to sunset, this gave them a rest, and I think it extended their life a couple of years.
Since I don't remember anything about camp, I do have a story. I was in grammar school, and there was a Sansei student I just met, and his name was Shudio. I said, "That's an unusual name, Shudio," because most of us had English names, you want to call it. I said, "Shudio, what kind of name is that?" He says, "Well, I really don't like my American name." I said, "What's your American name?" "Roar." His parents named after the camp. And I said, "What the hell is Roar?" I had no clue either at the time, because I was in grammar school. So he went by the name Shudio all his life, because he didn't want to be called Roar.
We were given vouchers to buy things at the company store. And so we bought shirts and skirts, and the men bought pants and shirts. And, but the people in Arkansas resented this.
Now I'm going to stay over here a little bit because I have heard a rumor that you, Ms. Ringo, might be able to tell us a little bit about what it was like to be at the dances at Fort Shelby.
Well, was it Fort Shelby or in Mississippi? Camp Shelby. Yeah, Camp Shelby. All I can say is my friend who I later married, George Anosaki, said I had more fun than anybody else.
I like that she's keeping it mysterious.
One thing the good came out of Jerome is that when camp was show was down here, all the DC guys were there, and they would come to camp. They would come here, or the girls would go down there. I don't know how. Well, my auntie met her husband from Hawaii, who was in the 442, and so but they met because of her being here and him being down there, and they got married. And they lived with us, and then they moved. They're in California, but I have to tell you something is that when they got married, they sent pictures, the marriage pictures to my grandmother and grandfather who lived with us. We were a 4-generation house at one point. And I went through all these pictures and I see this picture of my auntie and uncle. And I said, wow, that looks like Desiree Nez and Lucille Ball there. I told my auntie, I said, man, you were really a gorgeous woman. And she didn't understand what I was talking about. Anyway, but through them going down and meeting, they met because of Jerome and also the camp.
The Hawaiians and the 442 were rivals, and they just hated each other. But the Hawaiians decided that they would come up to Jerome to see if they could get rice or something, Japanese food to eat. But when they saw that the 442 families were behind barbed wires under a guard tower, they forgot all about that.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. I have one more question, and then I'm gonna pre-warn folks. I'm gonna ask one question, but then if anyone has questions that they would like to ask, think about it, and then we'll hand it over to you. But I'm taking personal privilege as the moderator. One thing that you mentioned that about the snakes, it reminded me about how my grandfather told a story about catching fireflies in a jar and bringing them to his mother who was sick in the Jerome Hospital at the time. And so I'm wondering if any of you had any memories of your parents that you might want to share.
But I had one incident that was kind of funny, I guess. But I was working in camp for a gentleman, and he told me, he says, I'm going out. If you want to go out to Jerome, I says, oh God, you mean you're gonna take us out? He says, yeah, I'll take you out. He says, but why don't you go get a friend so that you don't have to be alone? I said, okay. So I went out and got my friend and got back, and he gave us a pass, and then he got a pass, and we got on his car. We went to Jerome. He dropped us off. And when he dropped us off, he says, I'll pick you up in a couple hours. Okay. So we got off the road, got off the car, we looked up, and all we see was, I think it was a service station and a railroad station, and it looks like cafe or something. So it took us maybe 5 minutes to walk up to the railroad station, and we were all done. We didn't have nothing else to do. So about that time we was hungry, so well, let's go have something to eat. Okay. So we went in this place here. It had places to sit. They had a counter there with a menu up on the top. So we looked at the menu and we said, well, we'll have that. And we waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and we're sitting there. You could see two persons back there. It looks like one was a cook and a waitress. We waited there and nobody. About that time, from the side of we didn't realize it, but on the side there was somebody was knocking. It was a black person. They went right up to there, and I guess he ordered something, and pretty soon he got his food and he took off. So we looked at each other and said, hey, we're in the wrong place. Let's get out there and get our food. So we went back there. We knocked on it just like he did, and we got ignored. We never did get lunch. And we waited for another hour and a half for the guy, my boss, to come back to pick us up. And when we went back, everybody said, how was it? I said, oh, well, it's okay. But that night's dinner was really good.
Did you want to share any memories of your parents?
When I was probably about 2 years old, I remember going to the outside of the barracks and discovering that there's a big hole in the wall where a huge fan had been installed. Apparently, my parents had bought a big fan from Sears Roebuck, and in the midday heat, I could look in through the fan as it was whirling, and through the fan blades, I saw my father sleeping. And it was in the middle of the afternoon, and I asked him about that later as I got older. And his comment was, the one thing that was great about camp from his perspective was that they didn't really have rigid work schedules. And the way it was it got so hot, you couldn't really work during the middle of the day. And my uncles and other relatives who were in camp said, that was the best time from the perspective that they didn't have to work for a living. Okay, previous to camp, they had to work real hard just to have a poverty level lifestyle. And after camp, they had sort of a prejudicial style where people were always angry at them. But at camp, at least they had the freedom to take it easy when it got too hot. And they were always able to get away. Well, the younger aunts and uncles said they were always able to get away from their parents, which for them was really great. So they said they had mixed feelings about the camp from the perspective that in terms of the easy time in life, that was the easy time. It was sort of like being in prison, where it was in the days before forced labor. So there are pros and cons from their perspective of being in camp.
I never thought I'd ever see Arkansas again. I did a little traveling. I've gone to Washington, D.C., to Japan, Hawaii, even to Disneyland. But you know, coming to Alaska was my last thought I'd ever come because I never thought I'd ever see this place. Well, on June 4th, a day before my birthday, two of my daughters would come over to my house and said, "Hey, you know, Dad, we're taking you to Arkansas." I said, "You're kidding. I don't want to come to Arkansas. There's nothing for me here." But somehow they got me in the morning Friday, and we hit the airport, and here we are, Arkansas, good old Arkansas. Never thought I'd get over here.
Mary Nakahara was my Sunday school teacher, but we didn't study the Bible. Instead, we wrote form letters to the servicemen. And General Mark Clark, well, we sent one to him too, General Mark Clark, and he thanked us for keeping up the morale of the soldiers. And I have a scrapbook that's in the National Japanese American Museum in Los Angeles with the letters that the servicemen wrote back. And the pages are so old and fragile, it's really hard to read anything in there without destroying the pages.
Thank you, that sounds like such a resource.
This is my second pilgrimage, actually. The first one was in 1973. What happened was that the Nisei Post in Chicago hosted the Dumont American Legion Post during the National Convention. And the Nisei guys really threw a big party for these guys, really a big party, a lot of booze. And so as a result of that, the post down here is the one who really got involved and put together the pilgrimage in '73. And it was Dr. Hunter was a keynote speaker who was administrator here. And it was full-blown pilgrimage. We came to McGee and we got together and the state police escorted us out there. We didn't have a bus. There was like 30 cars involved. There was a TV station. It was covered by television. And what happened was that before that, as mentioned before, the place was really shabby and run down with weeds and everything. And Congressman Wilbur Mills from this, most of you are too young to know Wilbur Mills. Fanny Fox, he was drunk one night with her and they fell into the reflection pool in Washington DC that made the front page. Anyway, he's the one who allocated a little money for the senior citizens called the Green Thumb Project, I think, and they were able to clean up the whole cemetery area, and they actually had a rededication event. And we were here in '73, and I met Wiley McGee and had a talk with him, and he was saying, Ron, we're a little scared. I think our population was like 2,500. I think he mentioned that number. He had 15,000 folks out there. We don't know who they are, what's going on with them. And in the beginning, they said we were a little scared about this. And also in the beginning, the folks in the camp had to order things, and Sears would send everybody ordered things from Sears. And so the train, I guess, would leave a car filled with stuff, and they'd give it to everybody, deliver it in camp. In the beginning, the town would not open the doors to the Japanese when they came in to buy things. Until one pharmacist, he said, opened up his store, and the shelves got cleaned out. And so then everybody else started opening their doors too. And so that, but what really happened, he said, was that once they learn about the bravery of the 442, that the whole attitude in town changed. And there was a much closer relationship between the Nisei, the Japanese Americans in the camp with the citizens of McGee. That was Wiley McGee.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I am going to invite all of our survivors up for a photo. And while those folks are coming up, we're going to take a couple questions. Okay, so burning audience questions. We've got a question over here.
How many in your family, in the families that are represented there or out here, lost your property? Raise your hands. Because it's true, the children were used as workers, but it was your property. In Florin, 85% lost their property. My dad didn't, because there was a man by the name of Bob Fletcher who not only picked the crops, but he paid the taxes on the mortgage for our family, the Nita family, and the Okamoto family. And when we came back in 1945, my dad turned the headlights off on the car before driving in our driveway. He was that afraid. And we asked Bob, what about that bullet hole in the barn window? He said, oh, must have been a stray bullet. I was out there working and the bullet appeared. Somebody shot at him. So it was not safe, but I think a lot of people lost what they had.
Just me, but I kept a diary of from May 12, 71, I got ready for camp. And then the next day, we arrived at the Fresno Assembly Center. And this is a historical remembrance. And so we'll always keep this for history. So that's all I had to say. Did anyone else keep a diary? Nobody? Oh, somebody over here. You kept it since you went to camp. Oh, okay. Well, anyhow, this is a historical document.
Yes, and I see that Camp Shelby sticker on the front. I would love to hear that story, but it seems we're out of time. We're going to take some photos. So, I'm going to grab your diary back to keep. Good. Save of it. Yeah. Your daughter will have it. Okay. So we have one more question while photos are happening. Oh, hold on. There's a question among the panel.
I was born in Jerome, and I have a photo of Block 9, and I met Roy here, who was also in Block 9, and I just wonder if anybody else was in Block 9 in Jerome, because I have a block photo. Block 9.
Okay, your last question?
Thank you very much. I am the oldest of the Osaki Sansei. And my mother, when I was just going into my teens, started reminiscing to me about the swamps. Now, maybe Richard, Yada in particular might answer this since he's a homeboy.
I'm gonna run down there and try
Come
to take a
down
picture
here.
of this.
One of my mother's memories was that the men would go out into the swamps, especially those who missed the eels from the West Coast. And they would catch the poisonous snakes, whatever they were, and cook them up like eels. The other question, so I'm wondering if any of you had that experience of eating snakes as teriyaki eels. The other memory was even more puzzling to me when she was telling me as a young teenager. She said, that especially in the springtime, she would see couples go out into the swamps, and she could never understand what was so interesting at that time. Can any of you answer that question?
Happy to hand the mic over to anyone who'd like to answer those questions. I think maybe what happens in the swamp stays in the swamp. All right, so has everyone gotten a chance to take, oh, we have one more question over here. I think we might call it, so get your last photos. And then big smiles from the folks.
Hi, perhaps you didn't see this exhibit down at the Washington DC Smithsonian Institute about the Japanese American camps, but I know some of my aunts and an uncle went down there, and they were very angry because they made the camps look too nice. And I was just wondering if you had any experience on some of the exhibits or feelings about how some of this was depicted.
I was born in Jerome. Now you all know what the privacy conditions were in those barracks, and I've often wondered how I was conceived. And I never asked.
Did anyone else want to? Okay, one photo with Paul. We're taking big smiles. Hello. Sushi. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We're gonna make our way down the stairs and then get ready for the next panel.